The sun hung low over the desolate plains of South Dakota, its feeble light casting long shadows over the remnants of a once thriving civilization. Kyle, a grizzled ex-military man in his early 40s, scanned the horizon with keen, wary eyes. His weathered face, marked by years of hardship, carried the weight of protecting his family in a world gone mad. His military training had taught him to endure, adapt, and survive, but even those skills were being pushed to the limit in this unforgiving new world. Years ago, the collapse began as whispers of global unrest, food shortages, resource wars, and pandemics. Civilization unraveled faster than anyone had expected. The safety nets of society were torn apart, leaving survivors to fend for themselves in a brutal new reality. For Kyle, survival was no longer about serving a country or fulfilling a mission. It was about keeping his wife, Stevie, and their 3 children alive in a world that had no mercy for the weak. They had taken refuge in an abandoned farmhouse just outside Rapid City. The sturdy building, though worn by time and weather, offered a semblance of shelter against the elements and roving bands of scavengers. The surrounding fields, once fertile, were now barren, but the isolation provided a buffer from the chaos. Kyle had fortified the home as best he could, erecting barricades and setting up traps to deter intruders. His military-grade rifle, a relic from his past life, was never far from reach. The family's days were a ceaseless struggle for sustenance. Kyle had taught Stevie and the kids how to forage for edible plants and hunt small game. He had even managed to scavenge a solar panel from a nearby ghost town, which provided enough power to run a small radio and recharge a few batteries. But food and water remained scarce, and every venture beyond their makeshift sanctuary was fraught with danger. One crisp autumn morning, Kyle set out with his teenage son, Lucas, to check their snares in the nearby woods. Lucas, tall and wiry like his father, was eager to prove himself. Kyle had taught him everything he knew about tracking, stealth, and survival. The boy's youthful enthusiasm was a stark contrast to his father's grim pragmatism. "Stay low and keep quiet," Kyle whispered as they moved through the underbrush. "And remember, always check your 6. Lucas nodded, his face set in determination. They found 2 rabbits in the snares, a rare stroke of luck. As Kyle reset the traps, a distant sound caught his attention, the faint hum of an engine. He froze, his hand instinctively going to his rifle. "Get down," he hissed to Lucas, who immediately dropped to the ground. Through the trees, Kyle spotted a dilapidated pickup truck moving slowly along a dirt road. 3 men sat in the cab, their weapons visible even from a distance. Scavengers. Kyle's mind raced. They weren't headed toward the farmhouse, but their presence so close to his family's refuge was unsettling. "We're heading back," Kyle whispered. Now, the return to the farmhouse was tense. Kyle's senses were on high alert, every rustle of leaves and snap of a twig setting his nerves on edge. By the time they reached home, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in fiery hues. Stevie greeted them at the door, relief washing over her face when she saw the rabbits. "Good haul," she said, her voice tinged with exhaustion. Kyle nodded but didn't smile. "We've got company in the area. Scavengers." Stevie's expression hardened. She had learned to read Kyle's moods and knew what this meant. "What's the plan? We stay quiet and keep the lights low tonight. If they're passing through, they'll move on. But if they've got any idea we're here..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Stevie understood the stakes. Dinner that night was a somber affair. The rabbits provided a modest meal, and Kyle made sure the kids ate their fill before taking his own share. Around the table, the family spoke in hushed tones, their voices barely rising above the crackle of the fire in the hearth. The 2 younger children, Emma and Liam, clung to their mother, sensing the tension in the air. As darkness enveloped the farmhouse, Kyle took up his post by the window, his rifle across his lap. He watched the road through the scope, his eyes scanning for any sign of movement. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of the wind. Just when he began to think the scavengers had moved on, he saw it, a flicker of light in the distance. He woke Stevie and handed her a pistol. "They're coming." The family huddled in the shadows as the truck approached. Its headlights were off, but the faint glow of a lantern betrayed its position. Kyle's grip on his rifle tightened. He counted 3 figures as they exited the vehicle and began moving toward the house. "Dad," Lucas whispered, his voice trembling. "What do we do?" Kyle placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "We stick to the plan. Stay behind cover, and don't shoot unless I tell you." The scavengers reached the outer perimeter, where one of Kyle's traps was waiting. The sharp snap of a spring-loaded mechanism was followed by a scream of pain. Kyle didn't hesitate. He fired a warning shot into the air, the crack of the rifle echoing through the night. "Get off my land," he bellowed, his voice carrying the authority of a seasoned soldier. The remaining scavengers froze, their eyes darting toward the farmhouse. One of them raised a weapon, but Kyle was faster. His next shot struck the ground inches from the man's feet. "Next one goes through your skull," Kyle growled. The scavengers hesitated for a moment before retreating, dragging their injured companion back to the truck. The vehicle roared to life and disappeared into the night, leaving a tense silence in its wake. Kyle lowered his rifle but didn't relax. "They'll be back," he muttered. Stevie placed a hand on his arm. "We'll be ready." The encounter served as a stark reminder of the fragile line between survival and annihilation. Kyle knew their refuge was temporary, a precarious haven in an unforgiving world. But as he looked at his family, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of the fire, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were his mission now, and failure was not an option. For Kyle, survival was no longer about enduring the apocalypse. It was about building a future, no matter how bleak, for the people he loved most. And as long as he drew breath, he would fight to ensure they had a chance to live.